And hello, everyone. Everybody. Can I actually English today? This is why I read other people's words, because sometimes the words that are coming out of my mouth, do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? I don't always. But hello, everybody. Good evening or good morning, or good afternoon, or good night. Good wherever you happen to be. Tonight we are continuing with Spear of Destiny, finding Bucephalus. Who is Bucephalus, you ask? Well, that is a fantastic sounding question. If you'd been here along with us so far, you would have an idea of who Bucephalus is. But if you happen not to have been here with us and listening so far, well, you know what you're gonna have to do. You have yourself a couple of options. First, go to Amazon, buy the book, read the book, you find out who Bucephalus is. Option number 2, go and listen to the replays of the chapters I've recorded so far, all available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, or on Rumble. Just search Spear of Destiny. I have no idea what my page is actually called all over on Rumble. It would be too easy. Or option number 3, you can start listening now. And maybe as time goes along, we will find out who Bucephalus is once again. Because I assume we're in chapter 5. At some point, we must find Bucephalus. Am I wrong? I don't think I'm wrong. Either way, finding Bucephalus. We will find him. In fact, we have not found the Spear of Destiny yet, but what we did find on our last read was the Spear of Chaos. Now, it was a callback to a couple of, to one book ago. Spear of Destiny is book 2 in this series. Book 1 was titled, if I remember correctly, Spear of Chaos. Well, there you go. If that was Spear of Chaos, and this is Spear of Destiny, that explains where Spear of Chaos came from. Well, our intrepid heroes tried to destroy the Spear of Chaos. They went to a medicine man. They all worked together to try to build up this gigantic bonfire that they were going to burn the Spear of Chaos. Well, it did not exactly work out how they expected to. So our friends in here, Rachel, Mary Lou, Carly, Sierra, Kenneth. There was another guy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. I am sure we will find it again pretty shortly here. But they went and tried to burn the spear. The fire kind of blew up. Nothing happened to the spear, but we left ourselves on a cliffhanger because something happened to the Professor Medicine Man. So, that is where we are going to dig in and find out. Now, all of these people that we just talked about were in Book 1, Spear of Chaos. So if you want to know more about the crew, you'll have to stop out there and read up. But we are finding out more and more about our, I don't know if we call them heroes or what we call them here. Our characters, the characters we're reading about. We learn more and more about them as we read. So, little housekeeping reminder, I do record all of the chapters in here. I record them chapter by chapter. So if you have questions, I am happy to answer them. Whatever I'm able to answer, at any rate. I'm happy to get involved with you guys. I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to go through all of that. However, when I'm in the middle of reading the chapter, I'm going to read the chapter. I will be happy to engage in between chapters. Audience participation just doesn't work out really well when somebody is replaying the chapter later on. So, I will not be, chatting while I am reading the chapters. However, you are welcome to chat with each other. Jump into YouTube or Rumble or X or Twitch or Kick or TikTok. I'm on TikTok too. Hey, I'm all over the place. Wherever you want to be, jump on in and feel free to join the conversation. But on that note, if you happen to be in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. If you happen to be in a hot place, get yourself a cold drink. Speaking of drink, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we continue our indie reading series on this Indie April. I continue it in March and, May too. I just keep on reading. But Indie April and all. We are going to dive back in. Reading Spear of Destiny, Finding Bucephalus. Written by Mary Lou Wells. Edited by Kira Holiday. And now, 5. Consequences. Is everybody okay? Rachel was too dizzy to do anything but sit up while Mary Lou and Carly slowly climbed to their feet. Oh my God! Sierra exclaimed haltingly. For once, she was shocked out of saying anything snide. She just stared at the professor, or what had been the professor. Is he dead? What in the crap just happened? Sierra's eyes were as big as saucers. I don't know. I'm just as lost as you are on this one, Kenneth told her. I've never seen anybody turn into a wolf before. Well, not unless it's in a really stupid horror flick. He shook his head in confusion and went to check on the medicine man. The professor was bone-chillingly still, but Kenneth could feel a heartbeat. Their ally was indisputably now an enormous wolf. He's alive. It's hard to say how badly he's hurt aside from being a werewolf, Kenneth told them. He considered a moment. That's not all that's weird. He stood and removed a lighter from his back pocket. Check this one out. This is new. I heal fast, but damn, look, Kenneth said. He lit the lighter and ran it along along the skin of his forearm. What are you doing? Rachel gasped. You haven't had enough fire? Mary Lou asked him in dismay. Oh, shit, Carly exclaimed. You aren't burned at all. Not at all. And look, my leg looks like nothing ever happened to it. Kenneth pulled up what was left of his pants to show them his skin had no burns and the wounds from getting run over by the truck that morning were simply gone. Wow, that's freaky, Carly said quietly. Now, what do we do? The spear, Sierra said, ignoring anything the others had to say. The spear did it. She stood, staring at it, and staring at the professor, who was still unconscious. You all can do what you want, but I'm leaving. Let me know how it turns out. No, she stopped. On second thought, don't, she continued in a flat tone. Sierra's car keys jingled in her hand as she waved them for emphasis. Where are you going? Mary Lou asked her. We're supposed to be destroying this thing today. Sierra turned on her. Mary Lou, What do you think any of you or me can do to destroy a thing that can cause this sort of madness?" Sierra demanded as she snapped her fingers. "I never wanted any part of this in the first place." "Not to burst your bubble or anything, but I will remind you that we are all in this business because of you," Kenneth pointed out. "You need to see this through the same as any of the rest of us." "No," Sierra said firmly, "I don't. You can all leave me alone. I'm going home. I don't believe in any of this anymore. I can't take any more of this shit." In a fit of anger, she kicked the spear on the ground. As soon as she touched it, she felt such a wave of hate take over her gut, it nearly left her breathless. She looked at Mary Lou and grimaced. "Pitiful. I will see ya around the college if you live long enough to get there." With that, Sierra turned on her heel, walked away, and left the rest of them looking at one another helplessly. "Bitchy," Carly muttered. They could hear Sierra's car engine start running. The sound faded as Sierra left the shadow angels behind for good. "I didn't abandon her," Mary Lou said sadly. "She would have died without us, sacrificed on that stone altar." "No, you didn't, and neither did we." Carly shook her head. "But she's bitter inside after the living nightmare that all of us went through, and not everyone has the same kind of heart you do." "It's been rough on everyone," Brian said. "Nobody expected to have to deal with any of this. Better to let her go than to try to hold her back. We have other problems to deal with, like... Now what?" Carly shrugged, thinking, maybe somebody should get a stick and poke the professor to see if he'll wake up. "I say we let sleeping werewolves lie," Brian said dubiously. "No, we can't leave the professor there on the ground like that." Rachel smacked Brian's arm. "We need to get him inside. He was helping us, so we need to help him. Besides, you're the medical person." "I'm a paramedic, not a vet," Brian thought uncharitably. "And werewolves eat people." "He is so not going to eat us," Rachel shouted at him. "That's the professor, so you can just take that back." "Hey, I didn't say otherwise," Brian defended himself. "I didn't say anything. I just thought it." "Quit lying. I heard you loud and clear," Rachel protested vehemently. No, Rach, he didn't say anything." Mary Lou looked at her questioningly. "You were doing that at the mall, like we told you earlier. You are reading minds, only a lot stronger, or not limited to one person." "Oh, God," Rachel said, covering her eyes with her hands. "I didn't mean it." "Didn't mean what?" "When you said you wanted to read minds," Kenneth grinned, "maybe you shouldn't have asked for it." Rachel glanced at him through her fingers. "I just thought I was going crazy." "No argument here," Kenneth grinned wider. "Not helping, Ken," Mary Lou remarked. "That still doesn't solve the problem of us getting the professor inside. How are we going to manage that?" She considered the size of the wolf. "I don't think being a wolf made him any smaller. We'll have a hard time carrying him. I'm hoping he doesn't wake up till we know what this is." You guys?" Carly interrupted. "Is that another car I just heard out front? We're all here, so who could that be?" They all got quiet and looked at one another helplessly when they heard a door slam close to the house. "Somebody needs to go see who that is," Carly practically whispered. "What do we do with him?" Rachel whined nervously. She could feel another panic attack approaching. That morning she suspected they hadn't seen the last of trouble, but hadn't wanted to be right. Her thoughts spun as she tried to calm herself down. Mary Lou looked around quickly, wondering how they could hide the big gray wolf lying in the middle of the yard. She spotted the tarp used to cover the woodpile and carried it over to conceal the professor from sight. "We can use that to get him inside," Kenneth pointed out. "Yeah, that'll work," Brian agreed quietly. "But we need to get rid of whoever just pulled in." "Hi, you guys!" Diane rounded the corner of the house. "Hey, it's great to see you." She stopped abruptly, noticing the guilty looks on her friends' faces. She simultaneously observed the crater in the yard where the fire pit used to be. "What's going on? Where's the professor?" she asked. "And what happened to your clothes?" She looked Ken up and down. "I thought we agreed to no more fighting," she told him half-jokingly. Brian started to try to explain. "The professor—" He trailed off. Unsure what to say, he gestured vaguely to the tarp on the ground. Diane put her hand to her heart and staggered as she gasped. "He's not dead, is he?" All of the shadow angels started talking at once. Not exactly. Maybe. No kinda." Diane quickly slipped into cop mode. "He is or isn't dead," she demanded in a stern tone that didn't invite argument. "Well, not exactly," Mary Lou stood forth. "But we do seem to have a problem." "Oh, for gosh sakes!" Diane stalked over and lifted the tarp. She stopped short. "Are you guys pulling some kind of joke or what? I thought you said this is John." "Well, it was the professor," Kenneth said. "We aren't entirely sure what he is now." Brian interjected. "Popular vote says werewolf." He bounced on his toes. Diane considered for a moment, looked at the teens, looked at the comatose wolf, looked at the teens again, and stated in a deadpan voice, "If it wasn't for all the other insane shit that gone down recently, I wouldn't believe a word of it." The coyote who had arrived with Diane made his way over to the group. Curious, he sniffed out the wolf. Instead of backing away or being aggressive, he nudged him with his nose, yipped, and pawed at him. Perplexed and smelling magic overlaying the professor's scent, the coyote sat down beside him before sneezing to clear the strength of the scent out of his nose. He looked up at Diane and waited for the humans to decide what to do. Diane looked down at the coyote dubiously. "You think that's John too, huh?" "Well, I suppose I'll believe you if you do," she said. "First, let's get him in the house, and then you guys can tell me what on earth happened here to cause this kind of chaos. I see that thrice damned spear, so I assume it has something to do with this." They all pushed and pulled the large wolf onto the tarp. Together, Brian and Kenneth drug him to the house. They had some difficulty getting him up the steps, but still managed with Diane and Rachel's help. "After seeing zombies up and walking round, a werewolf isn't that much of a stretch, I suppose." Diane huffed and finally sat down on a cushioned chair with her legs folded under her. "But I want to know what happened. John's not showing any signs of anything like this before, or even any indication it's skinwalker magic. I've been here on the full moon, so what gives?" Mary Lou spoke up. "We tried to burn the spear in the fire pit out back. It exploded. Well, the fire did," she told Diane as she sat cross-legged on the floor. "Professor Holdeman was closest when it happened. It knocked us all down, caught Kent on fire, and after we managed to get ourselves together, we found the professor like this." She gestured toward the wolf on the tarp in the middle of the floor where they gently laid him down. "That's pretty much it," Carly agreed with her sister. The girl glared at the spear where it stood, propped in the corner as far away from them as possible, but still kept in sight. There was no scratch on it, or even a bit of char from the fire. She wanted to curse it and felt a seething anger wanting to bubble up inside her. Carly clamped down on it. "You're not gonna beat me, you asshole," Carly thought at it. "I win. You're dead and soul trapped." Carly was becoming familiar with the battle of wills against the 1,000-year-old bloodthirsty artifact that was proving to have an intelligence all its own. Her attention was pulled back by the professor, who was starting to stir. An impression of the world spinning around him was the professor's first sensation. Next was awareness. Then the pain hit. Disorientation shook him as the wolf briefly wondered where he was. A soft layer cushioned a slick surface underneath him. The professor attempted to move, and he opened his eyes. A flood of sensation and new stimuli hit him all at once. The tarp crackled loudly as what had been Professor John Medicine Bear Holderman tried to move. As a wolf, he saw the room from the perspective of the floor, but everything was oddly discolored. His living room was unfamiliar to him, muted and yet filled with sharply vibrant aura halos. He moved, determined to sit up, but only ended up flopping around on the slick tarp like a fish out of water. He attempted to get up again and yelped loudly as his shoulder impacted the floor. "Easy, John," Diane said, and gently pushed him down onto the floor. "You need to get your bearings while we figure out just what happened to you." She avoided making any sudden move when he turned his gaze on her. "Blue spirit eyes," she muttered and sat back on her heels. "John has the brown eyes of his native ancestors." Diane looked over at the coyote sitting on the sofa with his head in Kenneth's lap. Brian absent-mindedly stroked the coyote's back from the other end of the couch. The coyote felt Diane's eyes on him. The animal looked back at her with pricked ears. The ex-cop considered him. The coyote's eyes also tended to blue. She'd come to understand that he was an avatar for a spirit of light, one of God's many allies. But even his eyes were not quite as brilliant as this. Diane looked up at the teens sitting around the room. Their expressions conveyed varying degrees of fear and concern. "He's not a werewolf," she said flatly. "The eyes betray that this is something with a spiritual root. He's not a skinwalker because this shape is not something he chose. It was imposed on him." "How can you be sure?" Rachel asked nervously. "I told Brian he won't eat us, but I watch scary movies too." Embarrassed, she laughed a little. Brian poked Rachel, who had leaned on the arm of the couch next to him. He grinned at her. Still smiling, he turned his attention back to the conversation and considered everything being said. "John's been teaching me native medicine path," Diane told them. "I come here every evening and we discuss the nature of things. One of his totems is the spirit of the wolf. Maybe that has something to do with this." The professor tried to speak. It came out as a series of yips and barks, which startled him into silence. He lay back and looked expectantly at Diane while he thought hard. The room stopped spinning, so that at least was an improvement. What happened? The professor thought back to right before the blast of power had hit him. He reached out mentally for the familiar mind touch of his spirit guide and felt no answer. Could that thing have... Damned spear? He closed his eyes and forcibly pushed away the tide of grief to deal with later. He then opened his eyes and assessed his unfamiliar body with his eyes. Okay, so I'm a wolf. Shay must have protected me somehow, or it probably would have killed me. Spear of chaos indeed. He growled low in his throat. Hey, at least that's neat, he thought. Running his lengthened tongue across his new fangs, he considered further. Am I stuck like this? Okay, think like a dog. Maybe I can get up? His friends watched the professor work out how to operate his new body shape. Diane reached out and helped to steady him as he very deliberately and carefully rose to his feet at last. Rachel gasped. She held her breath for several moments before slowly letting it out. "I think I can hear him," she exclaimed. "For reals!" She looked around at the rest of her companions. "We can all hear him." Dan gave Rachel a questioning look. "He obviously can't talk like this." "No, I mean, I've been reading minds all day already, but for some reason, I can hear the professor in my head super clear, like he can talk." Diane's eyes slowly widened, and she looked at Rachel intently. "Telepathy. With everything that's happened, what if?" Diane started to say, and then trailed off hesitantly. "What if?" Mary Lou asked. "What if all of us got more of a gift or something, even if it's just temporary?" She said, "I know I'm on the shaman's walk now, but there's something else." Kenneth pursed his lips and sat up straighter with the coyote not moving from his lap. "Like what?" "Well, we have to destroy the spear, but maybe they're giving us special powers. I know it sounds far-fetched, but Rachel is reading minds. Mary Lou can mess with the weather, which we already knew. Carly has foresight and—" "Watch." Diane glared hard at the spoon Kenneth had put on the table. "I just figured out I could do this last night when the TV remote was across the room out of reach." The spoon flew off the table and into the floor with no one touching it. "So, what's my special physique superhero power if they've got telepathy, weatherwork, and then you've got telekinesis?" Kenneth asked. "Eating?" Mary Lou giggled. "Ha ha! You're so not funny," Kenneth said. He wasn't laughing. "No, listen. You ate that golden apple at the church, and Ulfur was ridiculously upset about it. We don't know why exactly or what it was for." Carly thought hard. Vaguely, she thought she remembered something. "I looked stuff up about Norse legend after we put the Viking down. Eden's apple," Carly said. "It's supposed to be food for the gods, according to legend." "Idun's apple," Kenneth corrected her and stopped cold. "The apples of Idun convey immortality, but surely that can't be right in this case. In Norse mythology, it's said that the Fountain of Youth feeds Yggdrasil, the world tree, and the fruit of the ash tree keeps the gods young. Now I remember that Ulfur muttered something about it right before we killed him." Rachel smiled at that. "And I'm thrilled he's gone, but superpower? Maybe it takes a superpower to eat those." "Maybe it's not a myth," Mary Lou pointed out. "We just found out that a lot of things we thought couldn't possibly be real really are real. I know I'll never look at anything the same way again. Perhaps what we see is barely the tip of the iceberg. Who knows what else is actually out there? Maybe, since you ate the apple, you'll figure out what it means." "I just want to know how you get an apple from an ash tree. Figure that one out," Kenneth observed, shaking his head. He looked at Brian, who was still listening without comment. "Wonder what you got, bro?" he asked. "That's weird," Mary Lou agreed. "But over the past half a year, we've learned a lot of weird stuff most people don't even believe in. That magic is real and that it works, but it is dangerous to play with. And also that reincarnation is possible under special circumstances." Mary Lou stopped and looked at Carly pointedly, then continued. "We also know that spirits are real and they can actually hurt us. and that we are all gifted people. We also discovered we can handle much more than we ever thought. And if we think about it hard, we've already done more in 6 months than most people do in a lifetime, Mary Lou said. Kenneth agreed. You got that right. I'm still not sure how we got roped into this crap. Yeah, so what? Mary Lou considered John, now sitting up beside the coyote. We have another problem. I know we just lost Sierra, but we can find our solutions. I think there's more out there that we don't know, but we'll find out. Carly nodded thoughtfully throughout Mary Lou's attempt to try to cheer up the group. Hey, yeah, shadow angels, remember? She leaned in and high-fived her sister. Exactly, Mary Lou said with a grin. We do good shit. They all looked at her in surprise at the uncharacteristic strong language. Carly wasn't fazed, however, and high-fived her again. Diane nodded at all of them and held up her hand to stay further debate. Diane thought hard about what the girls were saying. I agree, folks. We can and will figure out what to do with the spear, and we definitely need to explore the psychic issues, as I said. First, though, we need to figure out this current crisis. That's what we need to be thinking about. Does John's transformation have something to do with another gift we were given that we need to solve the next problem, or is it a fluke? One thing I'm sure of is Rachel can talk to the professor using her newly discovered gift. We have a start. I don't know how this works, Rachel began. It's kind of just been happening at random on its own with no rhyme or reason to it. Brian finally spoke up. Well, Mary Lou and I have done some astral travel. You can probably do something similar. Since you hear him already, just talk to him. If that doesn't work, see if you can trance. I know Ken's worked with you guys on meditation, right? Rachel nodded. Yeah. She looked at the wolf intently, thinking at him as hard as she could. Nothing, she said flatly in frustration. Carly looked across the room at Kenneth. Ken, you usually lead. Why don't you guys sit down with him on the floor and have Diane help, since she's worked with John? Here, I'll move, Mary Lou offered. She unfolded herself to exchange places with Kenneth. The coyote hopped down to settle on the floor beside Diane when she took the sofa. As always, the human's prickle of magic or energy use drew the coyote's rapt attention. After a couple of false tries, Rachel, with Diane and Ken steadying her, worked out that she wouldn't be able to simply think at the professor in wolf form because he couldn't hear her. However, they found they could talk to him verbally, and Rachel could listen to his mind speech in reply. His yips and barks were similar to speech, but John couldn't force his throat and tongue to make more than a close approximation to syllables. Once they had a method to communicate with him, he could haltingly talk to them. Diane's guess had proved close to being correct. His mind's okay, Rachel translated. It's just his body's affected as far as he can tell. She sighed. Thank God, she added. He says the idea of eating anybody is just gross. That's one worry taken care of, Carly said grimly. The rest of them nodded their relief. But that's not nearly as fun, Kenneth interjected with a lopsided grin. Rachel turned to glare on her friend. Really? Kenneth grinned at her and clacked his teeth together. He had to duck to avoid Rachel's swung fist. I was kidding, girl. What else is he saying? He's saying he might eat you anyway if you don't stop being a smartass, Rachel told him. Careful, dude. Rachel has a wolf, and she's not afraid to use it, Brian chuckled from behind Kenneth. That wasn't primarily what Diane urgently wanted to know, although she felt relieved that John posed no threat. She waved her hand and shook her head. Never mind that, y'all. Seriously, Rachel, we need more information. Diane looked into John's eyes directly and reached out to hold his face. "Can you tell us how this happened if you have any ideas?" she asked him, and waited while he yipped his answer. Rachel paid rapt attention to the thoughts behind his vocalizations. "The spear," she said. "Okay, but what? Shay. He's saying Shay." Rachel wrinkled her forehead and looked at Diane in confusion. "Dead. Sort of?" Diane looked sad. "We've had another casualty in this war," she told all of them. "As I told you, John has, or had, a spirit animal, a wolf spirit guide. Wolf was his totem animal in addition to bear. Shay's first instinct would be to protect his soul friend from a spiritual attack. However, I'm not sure how it causes this change. John?" She addressed her friend with the question. Rachel listened intently. "He says that Shay blocked the spear of chaos when it attacked and saved his life. It went for blood of its own doing. It killed Shay instead of him. But Shay isn't gone per se. Just on him, kind of like a skin. He thinks when the energy's mixed that Shay transformed the attack into protection that would stick." Rachel's brow furrowed as she continued. "That still doesn't make sense. How does the spirit dying translate into John having this whatever done to him?" Rachel listened to John's reply and spoke aloud for the group's benefit. "True sacrifice has power. Will and self-sacrifice even more so." Kenneth hummed aloud. Much like Christ's sacrifice for all, but targeted to one person?" Diane broke into the conversation. "That makes more sense than most of the rest of this, to be honest." "So, does that mean stuck, as in he's stuck like this? Or can he be a person again?" Mary Lou asked. "He doesn't know," Rachel said after a pause. She shook her black hair out of her face and shrugged. "Ah, I hate you!" Carly spat at the spear propped in the corner. "Even dead, Ulfa's evil still insists on living." Rich. Malevolence rolled off the artifact. The room suddenly seemed to close in on them. Mary Lou felt like gasping for breath, even though it didn't feel like an asthma attack. Kenneth suddenly felt unexplainable rage and the desire to rend something with his teeth. The wolf and coyote both growled low in their throats. Rachel couldn't stifle a strangled squeal as all eyes went to the spear of chaos. "Now it's talking to me. I heard it too," Carly said with narrowed eyes. Tension tightened her muscles with the overwhelming desire to break it over her knee. "Me too." Brian looked around with goosebumps raised on his arms. He tried to rub them down to no avail. The rest were nodding as well. "Me as well." Diane looked worried. "I thought we were going to be done with this today." Rachel began to cry. "Maybe Sierra was right to just walk away. I don't know if I can take much more." Brian looked grim. "Don't let it get to you, Rachel. It's just trying to rile us." Diane stood up, staring at the spear. "We don't need to discuss anything further with that thing present," she declared. "Carly, take the spear outside for a few minutes, would you? I want to test something. I just had a thought. What if the spear's presence is causing John's difficulty?" Carly retrieved it and headed out through the kitchen to the back door, despite her disgust at laying hands on the cursed weapon. Diane gestured at Carly's disappearing back. "Everybody go with her, please. I don't think anybody needs to be alone with that bloody thing. I will stay with John in case something happens." All of the teens filed out to the backyard. The screen slammed behind Rachel with a loud bang. Diane settled in for her vigil in the silent house and waited. Carly carried the spear to the edge of the yard. Brian grabbed a chair for her as he passed the wrecked fire pit. The preteen plopped down in the offered seat. Diane has a point. On the other hand, there's no guarantee getting this stupid thing away from him is going to fix it, Brian said, when they had regrouped at the end of the mowed grass. Not likely without complete and total destruction, Kenneth pointed out. We are going to have to come up with a working solution. And fast, Mary Lou finished for him. So, does anybody have any more bright ideas? Brian asked. Oh, you don't want to try chopping it up again? Kenneth teased. He crouched beside Carly close to the spear. Now that all was quiet, Kenneth considered the undamaged shaft, the Nordic runes, and the intricate metalworking on the blade. He inwardly shook his head. Like your idea was any better, Mr. Holy Fire should work, Carly responded. Fire obviously isn't going to cut it. Carly pursed her lips. Unless we have something a lot bigger and harder. A blowtorch, maybe? What about we blow it up with fireworks? Rachel's words sounded with some bite. What else? Kenneth considered her suggestion. Probably too dangerous given what's happened here. It would take some really powerful, strong heat to melt that thing down. Or maybe a chainsaw if the axe isn't strong enough, Brian said. Grind it up into sawdust, maybe, Rachel added. If we could figure out where a mill is. Mary Lou sighed and looked at the house. Regardless of what we do, I think today's a wash anyway. We need to get it away from John, so we might as well plan on taking the spear home and continue this as soon as we can get together again. With her back turned to Carly, she failed to see the beginning of what happened next. Rachel, however, choked on her next breath. The whispers that had been at the back of her head since her telepathic gift showed up were drowned out by a single new voice. Multi-layered and grating, the voice seemed to claw at her very identity. Though Rachel had not seen Ulfr's possessed dagger kill the skinwalker, she had been terrified by her friend's description of what had happened at the satanic church where so many died. She'd had nightmares of what she was seeing. The hatred Ulfr had carried with him as a constant companion since his childhood found a home within the Spear of Chaos. It seethed as it listened to the intent of those around it. In the failed attempt to kill the shaman, the expenditure of energy had left it ravenous. Fear flavored the air. More pressing, however, was the bright aura of power around the carriers of the hated bloodline around it. The bitch Ingegard's descendants had accomplished her revenge and completed Lord Loki's plan. But now they were an annoyance. Their light energy was infiltrated by its taint, perhaps just enough that it would be able to feed onto their deaths. Rachel's fear became its conduit to influence the fabric of the world around it. The Spear of Chaos worked its way into Rachel's wide-open mind with aware precision. Her mental barriers shattered, and it took delight in the violation of her mind the same way Ulfr had once delighted in violating the bodies of his victims. Rachel's scream echoed in two different levels of reality as the entity within the spear struck with lightning swiftness. Choked and unable to move, she could not warn her friends of the shadowy figure that suddenly loomed large in her sight. Tendrils of darkness seized the young woman, stabbed psychic barbs into her, and began feeding. Empowered, the Spear of Chaos expanded its attack to envelop all of them. The Skinwalker's stolen gift rendered all of them unable to see and began pressing the air out of their lungs. Mary Lou had barely managed to turn when Rachel screamed. Kenneth recognized the method of attack. Only the imposed paralysis kept him from cursing aloud. He seethed inwardly and felt the emotion of his hate cause the darkness to constrict further. The gentle brush of warm fur against the exposed skin of his leg distracted him from his fury. A soothing purr vibrated against him. The red cat! Kenneth remembered his kitty friend's presence at the same time he realized he was suddenly, inexplicably, free to move the moment the cat touched him. He didn't stop to question how Skuld's cat had broken the spell on him. Instead, Kenneth moved quickly against the spear's attack. He was closest to Carly, who could also not move as she held the spear. Kenneth rose from the ground, already in a spinning snap kick to get it out of her hands. The spear spun across the yard and landed with its point buried in the dirt, still standing. Its concentration broken, the artifact was forced to release the group from its murder attempt. Rachel collapsed bonelessly, no longer able to stand since the spear let go of her. Vaguely, she could hear Kenneth roundly cursing the artifact. Brian joined him with several choice words of his own, while Mary Lou and Carly tried to help Rachel to her feet, to no avail. Mary Lou held up her hand to forestall her sister against any more attempts to move Rachel. "She's gray. She's also shaky," she said with concern. "Brian, get over here," Mary Lou ordered. "There's something wrong." "Damn, Rach. You okay?" Brian got down beside her. Rachel tried to move her mouth, but no sound came out. When he touched her hand, he found that she was cold. "As warm as it is, okay." He checked her pulse and found her heart racing. Fast and shallow breathing. "What do we do?" Carly stood back out of the way, feeling helpless. Brian thought hard. "Well, she's just been through a hell of a trauma, but her symptoms say low blood sugar attack." Carly's eyes widened. "The spear can do that? Why would it hit her so much harder than the rest of us? I was holding on to it." Mary Lou inclined her head toward the bloody ruby around Carly's neck. "You have protection the rest of us don't," she told her younger sister. "Never mind that," Brian told them firmly. As a paramedic and first responder, he was in familiar territory. "We have a medical emergency here. Mary Lou, go quickly and see if the professor has something sweet that we can get into Rachel to get her blood sugar up." "Make it quick," Kenneth added as Mary Lou headed at a half-run toward the house. The girl burst into the house, opened cabinet doors, and slammed them shut again. "Diane," Mary Lou called out desperately, "do you know if there's any candy, snack cakes, or cookies, or, heck, even sugar in here?" "Cookie jar, top of the fridge," Diane answered her. "I made John some white chocolate peanut butter cookies a couple of days ago. I believe there's some left," Diane said as she strolled into the kitchen wearing a perplexed expression. "What the hell happened out there?" "Aha!" Mary Lou spotted the cookies. Unable to reach it, she jumped and smacked the cookie jar off its perch before neatly catching it in midair. "Tell you as soon as we get Rachel on her feet," Mary Lou told her and ran back out. "Wait. What?" Diane called after her. Casting a glance back at John, who still seemed to be stuck as a wolf, she apologetically waved at him and followed Mary Lou outside. The professor, reasonably able to make his new shape work, also pushed open the door. He'd heard the commotion and was determined to find out what was up. Rachel's color slowly returned to normal, and her shakes diminished as she devoured the handful of cookies Mary Lou brought her. She finally spoke to her friends, who helped her sit up. "We have to get rid of that thing," she said, "before it kills every last one of us," she continued with difficulty. She worked her mouth to make her words come out with some sense. "Sierra's right. We should just put back where we got it, or throw it in the river. Walk away." "We can't do that. We can't put it back," Carly said. "Daddy drove by there the other day and said the whole side of the hill has slipped. They have a retainer net over it to keep it off the road. If they're working on it, there's no way we're getting up there." "I don't care," Rachel whined. "Just get it away from me." "So, what just happened?" Diane demanded. Care to clue me in?" Everyone looked around at each other, wondering where to start and how to describe the paralyzing fear and darkness. Brian, who still supported Rachel in a sitting position, began to explain. Remember back at the church?" Brian began as Diane nodded. "The first time, not the second time. You were there." Go on," Diane nodded. Her eyes grew big as her suspicion at what he was getting at made her want to shiver. Kenneth broke in. "What he's trying to say is that damned spear is acting like the skinwalker's dagger. Only worse. Now it's super juiced up and it attacked all of us just standing here." Ulfer. Diane spat the hated name. "So, since Carly killed him with the spear when that bit of his soul was out of the dagger, he's just acting through the new item? Makes sense, in a sick and twisted kind of way." "Yeah, this is what I was afraid was going to happen before I killed Ulfa with it," Carly stated flatly with distaste. "I figured that his death was just going to make it worse because of that stupid pact he made with Loki. How do you sit at the right hand of your evil, nefarious so-called god if you're dead?" Carly wrinkled her nose. "Unless your death just makes you something else, and that thing eats people." She thought over Princess Ingigerd's memories. She recalled the murder of her children 1,000 years before by the same weapon Carly now found herself forced to carry until its destruction. The girl shivered. Brian continued in a subdued tone. "We were talking about how we were going to break it up or get rid of it, in front of it. The Spear of Chaos is as self-aware as Ulfa was in life, or at least half life since he wasn't really what you'd call alive," Diane said. "Yeah, and this is the same way Skinwalker got his ass handed to him," Kenneth mused as he rubbed at a smudge of dirt on his face. "He had his own plans, and Ulfa didn't like it. Now we're the next target." Diane turned the problem over in her mind and came to a decision. "Don't tell it any more of our plans. We will have to watch it until we figure out what to do. Carly, wrap it up and put it in the car, and you guys get it out of here. We'll plan our next move out of earshot." "What if it does it again while my sister's driving?" Carly wanted to know. "We don't really have a choice right now," Diane said firmly. "We have got to get Rachel home. I'll see to her and the professor. Just get that thing out of here so I can clean up its mess." "I'll see Rachel home," Brian told them as Carly wrapped the spear back up. "Fine. Call me later and we'll go from there," Diane said. And hello to Mary Lou. Good evening. Happy to have you here. Gandor 401 Carry Blue 3. Can listen while multitasking. Absolutely. That is the joy of audiobooks. Samet Yasar 8532. Hello. And Shadowed Fang. Hello, hello. Look at that. We might have ourselves an author, we might have ourselves an editor, and we have you guys. You guys are here with us for the reading. And yes, poor John, stuck in the body of a wolf and has lost one of his spirit guides. It's not a very nice thing for him. And then the Spear of Chaos just decides to go hog wild and try to take out the lot of them by eating them all psychically. Probably not exactly what you want to have happen to your younger teen people. But, hey, they survived. Thank you, Kitty Cat. What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, maybe the pussycat ain't, doing everything. Kenneth might have got himself up in there too. Up in here, up in here. Y'all gonna make me act the fool. Okay, I'll stop. I know you're not here to listen to me vamp and sing weird things. You guys are here for Spear of Destiny, finding Bucephalus. Finding Snuffleupagus? No, that's not right. Finding M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong? No, that's not right either. Bucephalus. Finding Bucephalus. All right, guys, we will pick it back up with 6. A New Plan. August 3rd, 1985. Lenoir City, Tennessee. Whitewater boiled out of the only spillway at the base of Fort Loudon Dam. The current was light, but a questionable weather forecast kept most fishermen away. Mary Lou pulled into the mostly empty parking lot on the hill overlooking the dam with Carly and Kenneth in her Chevy and Rachel with Brian in the Thunderbird right behind them. Diane and the professor were there waiting for them. Out of concern for the medicine man, they chose a spot on the opposite side of the parking lot from his small powder blue Toyota hatchback. Kenneth and Mary Lou got out and walked over to the professor's car. Student paperwork from his college classes littered the back. They saw Diane with the near human-sized gray wolf in the vehicle's back seat. Mary Lou's heart fell. She let out a sigh and addressed them both. She forced herself to sound more cheerful than she felt. "Hi, guys. No luck with the professor turning back into himself?" Diane looked worried. "Oh, actually, he did about a half hour after you guys left with the spear in tow. But about 20 minutes ago, John and I were sitting here perfectly fine, and then he started having something like a seizure. I threw that blanket you see in the back floorboard over the top of him so nobody would notice if they pulled in here. Thank goodness they didn't. As you can see, he is now a wolf again." 20 minutes, Kenneth heard Diane as he approached the driver's side. He thought hard, calculating time and distance. "We would have been in Loudon getting close to the interstate with the spear in the car." He whistled and glanced at Carly, who was carrying the spear wrapped up in a beach towel as she approached from behind him. "That thing has some kind of impressive reach." "What makes you say that?" Diane bit her lip and involuntarily shuddered. She looked around for the rest of the group and noticed Rachel standing back away from everyone. Diane thought Rachel looked grim and frightened. Her own comfort level was non-existent with the spear this close. Diane stared suspiciously at it for a moment, but it was quiet and seemingly harmless. She knew that for a lie, and steeled herself mentally. Kenneth cleared his throat and leaned on the car, looking at his friends. The professor didn't look injured, but he took up the whole back seat of the small Toyota hatchback. "Because," Kenneth began, "we would have been about 8 to 10 miles away. It is 20 minutes from south of the river to Loudon. That's a long stretch for some kind of raw spiritual effect." Diane glanced again at Carly, who was holding the spear. "One wonders what else it can do and what other effect it might have at that distance." Kenneth just nodded and agreed. "Yeah." "Why don't y'all quit chattering about it and get it out of here?" Rachel finally spoke to the rest of the group. "Good idea." Diane nodded. "We should get this over with, John." She looked back at the professor, who showed no sign that he wanted to get out of the car. Instead, he just laid his ears back and glared at the spear as Carly passed by with it in her hands. They headed to the steep ramp that led to the walkway below the dam. The sidewalk continued for a stretch alongside the churning water. Rachel, who led the group, began to hang back so that she trailed behind. Kenneth led the way to the river and the water's edge. "They're not letting a lot of water through the turbines," Brian bounced eagerly. "It's too bad we don't have fishing poles with us." he said. Mary Lou looked back at him doubtfully. Yeah, but we have other things to worry about today. Kenneth broke into the conversation as they walked. There should be some good fish in here. I've heard there's some massive fish in this lake. How big? Carly asked, looking across the lake at the swirling waters beneath the dam. Big enough to take your head off. Kenneth grinned at Carly's widened eyes. Some of the fish in this lake are as big as you are, he said. Whoa, that's some big freaking fish, Mary Lou responded. So, where are we going, Ken? She asked when he started up another set of steps. Down to the deep as close as we can get to the deepest water, Kenneth replied. He glanced back the way they had come. At least it's deserted this morning except for us. That probably has something to do with the approaching weather, I'd say. He eyed the sky and looked at Mary Lou. It was becoming a running joke, even though both of them knew it was no joking matter. Your dark cloud is following you around, as usual, he said to her. Looks like it, she agreed. Mary Lou peered at the quick-moving layer of clouds above them. Another thunderstorm threatened. The sky along the horizon was dark, and thunder began to roll. In response to the cloud cover, the water turned dark gray. Ominous, Diane muttered almost under her breath. That storm is moving almost as fast as the current, Brian agreed in a subdued voice. We shouldn't be standing out here when it hits. Mary Lou can keep us safe, Carly said confidently. I can't while we are here, Mary Lou answered. I don't have any control with the spear this close to me. It's like everything is going wrong all at once. What do you mean? Diane asked her. I couldn't find my keys this morning. My tire was flat. I had to air it before we could get started. And there were 2 wrecks on the road between home and here. She shook her head in wonderment. Although I hardly think the spear could be responsible for all of that, though. Maybe not, but it has demonstrated incredible power to harm and a long reach. I don't think we can underestimate it, Diane pointed out. No argument there. Mary Lou nodded and watched Carly hand the spear to Kenneth. Upon taking the spear in hand, Kenneth felt an immediate surge of hate, lust, and desire to kill, all wrapped up in his emotions as soon as he touched it. My God, he whispered, and nearly doubled over from the tension that took hold of his muscles. Determined not to let the spear distract him from his purpose, he bounced it in his hand 3 or 4 times to get a feel for its weight and balance. With the spear held over his head like a javelin, Kenneth walked down the steps to the edge of the churning water. As he did so, the siren horn on the dam sounded warning simultaneously as the gusting front of the storm hit. White-capped waves on the lake threw spray into their faces. With a blinding flash of lightning that split the air, the heavens opened up with a downpour. In seconds, their clothes were soaked. Visibility was reduced to just a few feet. The spillway of the dam opened and changed the character of the lake. Moments before, it had been only a strong current, and with the additional water flow, it was far more violent. Despite the wind or the rain, Kenneth drew back and, with full strength, attempted to hurl the spear as far away from himself as possible, only to find the spear refused to let go of him. As he hit the water, a mocking sense of triumph from the spear of chaos met his dismay as it pulled him beneath the raging waters of the spillway. Powerful enough to rip an average person apart with thousands of pounds of force behind it, the current swirled around Kenneth as he finally managed to let go of the spear, which sank to the bottom point first. Even in the murky water, the spear gleamed darkly as a black miasma streamed out from it. Kenneth determined the direction of the surface, but the circling current caught him as he tried to swim. Looking up, He recognized that backlit against the light from above him was the supple shape of the only shark able to live in both fresh water and salt water. He watched as it attacked another fish the size of a small Volkswagen. It bore the other fish to the bottom and bit it in half. Fish blood and miasma from the artifact attracted the attention of other denizens of the murky water. From Kenneth's perspective, every living thing in the river suddenly went mad. He found himself at the center of a feeding frenzy. Desperate to defend himself, he grabbed at the only weapon to hand as the sleek shape of the bull shark sliced through the water straight at him. The Spear of Chaos allowed itself to be picked up and used as a weapon to fend off the blood-crazed predator. It easily cut through the water without typical resistance and speared through the shark's body. Black veins crawled over the shark's skin from the puncture. In Kenneth's hands, the spear shuddered and poured a sense of pleasure into him as it fed. He swung violently to try to dislodge the dying shark, only for it to be ripped off the spear by a catfish twice Kenneth's height. Tainted blood poured into the water from the shark. The catfish that attempted to eat it shuddered, twitched, and went belly up. It was torn apart by others before it reached the surface as the feeding frenzy grew. Sleek brown shapes jetted between the fish, unidentifiable in the gloom caused by the storm and increasing mud and debris caught in the current. Tiny claws closed around Kenneth's knee just before a set of teeth ripped a chunk out of his upper thigh, narrowly missing tendon. An impact from behind threw him forward against the rocks at the bottom. The unidentified attacker caused him to hit his head against the spear's shaft well in his grip. It also scraped all of the skin off his knuckles and wrists. Kenneth realized two things simultaneously. First, he wasn't drowning, even though he hadn't surfaced in far too long. Secondly, he could not leave the spear where they had planned to get rid of it in the river. A horrible grinding sound came from the dam. It echoed hollowly under the water as a turbine stalled and the sirens blared across the rain-drenched river. Kenneth wondered if the dam was also going to break. He fought his way through the raging waters with the spear and finally kicked his way to the surface, but barely for a moment. A sandpaper vise closed around his calf and yanked him back beneath the water as something tried to eat his leg off. He kicked at whatever held him, but his leg only slipped further down its throat as he attempted to get loose. Anger gave him extra strength. Kenneth finally took the butt of the spear and slammed it into where he estimated the thing's eye might be. Maddened, it let go of him. Rolling as it went past, the sharp edge of a fin tore open his side. It flayed skin apart and laid his ribs open to the bone. Kenneth fought harder to regain the surface. He caught a momentary glimpse of the shore and struck out for it with the spear in tow. With his head just barely above the water, he could not see what rammed into his abdomen and stole his breath as it knocked him back beneath the waves. Another ominous grinding sound echoed as the turbine squealed in distress under the dam. The frenzied fish gave the blackened water a red tinge as they violently got torn apart. Worse, they died en masse as they shared the poison. The corruption of the spear stopped their hearts as they fed. An increasing number of fish floated dead in the current. On shore, the anxious teens heard a growl from the car where Medicine Bear still sat turned into a wolf. Many things suddenly swarmed over the rocks from the river to the parking lot. "Oh, my God!" Diane exclaimed, eyes wide. "Rats! Look!" "Shit!" Brian exclaimed, while Rachel started screaming. "Everything's gone crazy!" More minutes passed. They began to lose hope. "He's dead!" Rachel sobbed, inconsolable. She looked at Brian with wounded eyes and her hair plastered to her face. "That thing finally managed to kill one of us! Wolfer, you bastard!" she screamed at the river. Mary Lou, unwilling to give up, tried to peer through the rain and scoured the banks to either side of the river with her eyes. She mentally reached out with her empathic gift. She could still feel Kenneth's presence. "No, he's not dead," she screamed back at Rachel. "We have to find him." "It's been at least 20 minutes," Brian argued. "There's no way." "I know he's not dead." Mary Lou was crying but determined. "Wake up, Mary Lou. There's no way anybody could have survived that." Brian tried his best to comfort Rachel by holding her while attempting to make his other friends see logic. "It's time to go. We'll call the rescue squad and have 'em dredge for his body. It'll only take 'em about 5 to 8 minutes to get here. I can call them from my EMS radio in the car." "You can go," Mary Lou snapped through chattering teeth. Goosebumps covered her arms as she tried rubbing them to warm herself in the drenching rain. She was too upset even to try to reach out for the storm to calm it. "I'm staying right here," Mary Lou declared. She peered through the water pouring down her face. "I know he's coming. I can feel it." She trailed off hopefully. The logic was beginning to war with even her conviction. It had been too long, and the minutes were ticking away. She knew Brian had a radio. The rescue squad would be on their way soon. "Either Ken's dead, or he isn't," Carly shrugged. "We can't do anything. You can stand here and argue about it, but I'm going back to the car and out of the rain." Mary Lou turned to glare at Carly's departing back. Her mouth was open, and her eyes were wide with surprise. For that moment, Carly's cold response chilled her to silence more than the wet droplets running down her neck. She watched forlornly as the rest of her friends walked up the ramp. Mary Lou scoured the raging current one more time before she, too, gave up and walked away. A splash caught her attention, and she gasped. "There!" She turned to yell at the others, but they couldn't hear her over the thunderstorm from the parking lot. Kenneth finally surfaced at the water's edge with the spear in hand. Grabbing onto a large rock, he steadied himself as he spit water and gasped air. "Ken, are you okay?" Mary Lou clambered over the rocks and grabbed him to help him up onto the bank. "I've been better," he said, gasping. "We need a new plan, though. This thing is too dangerous to leave just lying around." "We're running out of ideas," she said as she half supported him up the walkway. Her eyes were big, and she shivered in the cold rain. Icy fingers seemed to trail up and down her back with the proximity of the spear. "I know," he nodded, "but we should have known better than this after that last attack. It's not going to go easy." His tone was grim. "What happened out there?" Mary Lou asked through chattering teeth. "Everyone thought you drowned." "I should have," he said definitively. "It's only by the grace of God I didn't. Currents are so strong I couldn't surface or breathe. Everything was crazy stupid. One of the turbines broke after the spear hit the water. There's no way I could leave it." "We'll figure it out later. For now, let's get you warm and dry," Mary Lou said. "I'm just grateful you made it out of there." Her relief made her forget her reserve, and she slipped her arms around him. "I seem to be immortal," Kenneth began with an indrawn breath and ended with an ironic chuckle. "Well, if we had to be stuck with this damned thing, at least there are some perks." He checked his wounds, which, though raw, were already closing. Rachel interrupted him while he was still trying to speak. She only had eyes for the spear Kenneth held and completely ignored what he'd said. "How dare you!" she screamed shrilly. Rachel's frustration and fear found voice. "What are you doing? That thing is supposed to be gone, gotten rid of. You had no business bringing it back up here." "Damn, Ken. It's been 45 minutes at this point, and Loudon Rescue is on the way, but Rach is right. We need to be done with this thing for good." Brian pointed at the spear. "I'm glad you made it out of there alive, but we came out here to get rid of it. What gives, man?" Kenneth handed the spear to Carly, who took it reluctantly. "Somebody better have a towel or something," he said. Brian happened to have a spare shirt in his trunk. Kenneth wiped the water, mud, and blood off his face as he explained. Diane and the professor stood by, listening quietly to the conversation. Diane looked worried but felt helpless. She had also thought the boy was gone, drowned in the river. "Here's how I see it now," Kenneth said. His expression was grim as he looked around at the group. "If we leave it out here, it's going to get serious fast. Spear of chaos, right? What could possibly go wrong with that on the downside of that much water?" He paused to let his words sink in. Their eyes widened as they realized what he was saying. Rachel looked at the dam and finally got it. Her shoulders sagged in defeat as Kenneth continued. "If the dam doesn't break, the water will be poisoned for miles. If the water isn't poisoned, how many deaths of fishermen or workers would the spear be responsible for? And us by extension. I'm sorry, Rachel. I just couldn't leave it in there when I saw what it was capable of doing in just the short time it pulled me in." "We can't do it this way," Diane said. She thought hard to come up with alternatives and drew a blank. She threw up her hands. "We're going to have to take it back home," Carly sighed. "Again." "Yep," Kenneth agreed. "Or no." He stopped, thinking. "It needs to go back to your place, Carly." Brian's expression was bleak. "We can't do anything else today either." "It seems to do the least amount of damage at Mom and Dad's," Mary Lou observed. "Probably because they're already so dysfunctional." She wrinkled her nose. "And because nobody is messing with it there," Brian pointed out. "Probably," Mary Lou agreed. "Okay, so we'll take it back there wrapped up and hide it in the garage and all the junk they keep in there." "Let's go then. The sooner we drop this thing off, the better," Brian said. "Wait," Ken stopped them. "No, that's not it. You are forgetting," he pointed at Carly. "She is why it does less damage stuck in the basement garage in Knoxville and all the hoarded chaos of the mess your mom keeps. It's what's around her neck, the blood ruby, that's keeping it in check." Carly wrinkled her nose. "Probably." She looked up the hill and noted that help was late to arrive. She pointed at the flashing lights. Ken turned to see an ambulance, marked Lenore City Police patrol car, and two SUVs that came smoothly in behind them. One officer had a boat in tow marked Loudoun County Fire and Rescue. Brian's face lit with a grin, his relief showing. "They'll want to have a look at you, Ken. We better go talk to them anyway so they know they weren't called out here on a wild goose chase." Brian walked over to the Lenore City officer, greeted him with a handshake, and high-fived the EMT that got out of the ambulance. Kenneth joined them. The others stood back watching while Ken went to the back of the ambulance where the EMTs looked at his injuries. Mary Lou felt almost shocked at what had just happened. She could tell from their wary eyes and pensive faces that her friends weren't happy either. Carly was oddly resigned and quiet. Rachel's teeth clacked together, chattering with both cold and nerves as she hugged herself. "We have to do something," Mary Lou said softly, "before one of us dies for real." Diane moved closer. "You're right, Mary Lou," she agreed. "I've seen enough death and trat already because of that thing and its maker. Ken's right. We can't leave it someplace without an active guard. It's dangerous. It's clearly capable of attacking and manipulating its environment. Maybe it'll be satisfied for a while, though, after this little incident. I hope, anyway. I hope this will give us time to figure out what our new path will be," Mary Lou said. "Girls, after witnessing this today, I'd say we don't have the time to play around any longer," Diane replied. "We need that new plan now. Despite the magic ruby, I suspect that taking it back to a child's house, even with protection, is a bad idea. Sooner or later, the spear will be found, and how's she gonna explain it to her parents? If they try to get rid of it not knowing what they have, that would be a highly volatile situation and put other lives at risk." "So, what do you suggest?" Mary Lou asked. "We'll take it for now," Diane said flatly with distaste. "I'm an adult. I live alone. Our coyote friend is there to help guard it, at least part of the time. As an avatar, he has some spiritual protection of his own." "Then what?" Mary Lou asked pointedly. "I'm not done," Diane told her and looked to her sister. "Carly." "What?" Carly asked. "You're gonna have to give up your necklace," Diane told her. "But I'm charged with holding on to both things," Carly objected in a plaintive tone. Diane didn't entirely ignore the young girl's narrowed eyes and tight lips. Did she see a glimmer of possessiveness over the spear? Was it taking hold of her after all? "You don't have a choice, child," Diane pointed out. "Ken is right about the stone. The blue binding beads are gone. Those were the only thing holding the fractured spirit of Ulfa in check. Now the blood ruby is all we got. So, wrap it up, put the necklace on it, and hand it over." Carly reluctantly complied. Diane placed the carefully wrapped spear in the trunk of the professor's blue car. She hesitated a moment as a thought hit her. She closed the car's trunk firmly and turned to look at their anxious faces. "I'm going to take this thing home to get it out of here," Diane told them in a determined voice. "You all take care of things at home and meet me this next Saturday bright and early back at the professor's house. I just had another idea." "Okay," Mary Lou agreed. "What are you thinking?" "We can discuss that Saturday, away from the Spear of Chaos, where it can't listen in." Diane hesitated. "Just a question. Can anybody do a road trip? Camp? Travel?" She looked around as people thought about it and nodded yes or no. "Okay, then. It's well enough. I'll see you Saturday so we can plan." The end of Chapter 6. And we're about an hour and a half into the stream, so I'm not going to try to get into another chapter here. We will pick it up again after this. Not leaving off on, the professor turning into a wolf this time, though. We're better off. So, a couple of things, if you guys didn't happen to be in the YouTube channel, even though the name of the town looks French, it is pronounced Lenore City by locals, despite it being spelled like a French word. Can't keep it, can't break it, and certainly can't throw the spear away. We just had a mission to the moon. should have put it onto a spacecraft, taken it out into space, and flung it into the void. Now, granted, this is back in the 1980s. Not sure when our space missions were around then, but it's a thought, isn't it? Just what you want. Astronauts out in space with the Spear of Chaos. And Fort Loudon Dam holds back a huge reservoir of water. You fish on the downside part. So they leave the spear there, it poisons all the water, all of the fish come through, all poisoned, the people eat it, the people die. It's bad for everybody. That is why they could not leave it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for coming along to spend this evening with me, the Spear of Destiny, finding Bucephalus. Assuming the rocket doesn't blow up, yep. Be our luck that it would hit the sun and make the sun go dark. Poof. No. Yeah, that would be bad. Well, once again, if you guys enjoyed the reading today, if you caught only a part of it, I will have the videos of the chapters put up onto the YouTube channel a little bit later this evening, YouTube and Rumble. Just search Spear of Destiny and you can probably find it. Or search by my name, Sir Arminius. That's my handle on both of those. YouTube.com/@SirArminius and whatever the heck Rumbles is. In addition, I will have all the chapters up through chapter 6 posted on there as of this evening. 5 and 6 go up tonight. If you have not already and you are enjoying the book, as I am, remember, this is book 2. You got to go pick up book 1. I didn't read book 1. You have to go pick it up and read it yourself. And you can pick up book 2. Should be out there and supporting our author. Written by Mary Lou Wells. Edited by Kira Holiday. Go out there. Support them. Buy the book. It is Indie Author Month. What better time to get out there and support your indie authors than now? Buy many of the books that I have read. You could get Telefrog. You could get Spear of Destiny, Spear of Chaos. You could get Gifted. You could get, Travels in Thailand. I can't remember the name off the top of my head at the moment because, of course, my brain doesn't work that way. You could get any of the number of books that I have read. There are lots more coming, everyone. I have a backlog behind these books. We have books to bring us probably into at least August of this year. Constant reading. Gotta love supporting them. But make sure you get out there and support your indie authors. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of your weekend. I will be back to continue this reading on Tuesday. I hope you will come along and enjoy. If you cannot make it, you can always catch the chapter replays on the YouTube or Rumble channels. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. I will see you guys again soon. Good night, all.